and I'm going to give the woman a seed. And when she produces that seed, it's going to crush the head of the serpent. So never sleep on a woman who has a casket and a curse because she also has a seed attached to her name.
If I see one more black female,
I'm not going to do shit at my expense.
we're black women. No, folks are going to do everything they can to distort the truth. Hard-working, highly educated, successful people who happen to be black.
The most disrespected person in America is the black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the black woman. The most neglected person in America is the black woman. To respect our women and to protect our women.
Like black women, we so tough all the time. God is real and God lives.
It's out of all of us.
Hello everybody, how are you guys doing? How are you guys feeling? I want to talk about that Tyre Nichols case, the outcome. And this case, oh my God, it just breaks my heart. But I want to give you guys the verdict before I give you guys my opinion on it. So here's what happened. Here's the verdict. I'm going to play the news story and then we're going to get into it.
Breaking news. 3 former Memphis police officers have just been found not guilty on all charges in the state trial over the beating death of Tyre Nichols. The jury reaching that verdict on just the second day of deliberations. Let's get right to NBC News correspondent George Solis. He's been tracking this. He joins us now. George, take us through the verdict and the reaction inside the court.
Yeah, this verdict was unanimous over the course of 2 days after a trial that started back on April 28th. The jury coming back and delivering a not guilty verdict for all of the 7 counts in this indictment. They are as followed. The most serious, of course, being that second-degree murder charge. You heard the jury there saying not guilty for Demetrius Haley, Tadarius Bean, and Justice Smith. On count 2 for the aggravated assault act in concert, not guilty. For count 3, aggravated kidnapping, not guilty. Count 4, aggravated kidnapping, not guilty. Count 5, official misconduct. And then count 6, which was another count of official misconduct, both not guilty. And then count 7, that official oppression charge, also found not guilty. Within the courtroom, you saw a number of hugs that were taking place, obviously, from the officers. They're the former officers, their elation on their faces after this verdict was read. Again, these 3 officers still face the prospect of years in prison after they were convicted in federal court of charges last year. Again, these were for the state charges. Some more reaction coming in forthcoming. We are waiting to hear from attorney Ben Crump, who we understand also put out a statement shortly after this verdict was read. We'll go ahead and get that to you. We have not heard at this point if there's any reaction from the mother of Tyre Nichols, who was one of the state's witnesses in this case. Very emotional, again, during this trial that began back on April 28th. Pretty quick turnaround when you consider how much this jury was charged with going down this list of charges. 21 counts between the 3 officers overall. But again, at this hour, the 7-count indictment, the jury coming back finding not guilty for all of these charges. And again, we'll wait to see what the sentencing is for those federal charges. Again, this story is developing over the course of this case, guys. I should note there were 21 witnesses brought in total. The state only bringing up 5, including Tyre Nichols' mother. Defense bringing 17 witnesses to this case. Again, reaction still forthcoming, and we're waiting to see if the former officers, have any reaction post this verdict, guys.
This really broke my heart because I remember this man's mother and her testimony and what she spoke about. And I just want to even talk about the message that is coming across because, they say that this is how you're supposed to fight for justice. You're supposed to go to court. You're supposed to have your time in court. You're supposed to, speak up in this manner. Don't take it to the streets. Don't, get violent. Violence only breeds violence. Don't take it that way, And then they also say that the police officers are on these streets to protect us. They're here to guide us. They're here to look after us. They're here for our, well-being. They're here to positively protect us. And we have not been seeing that. Not at all. This statement has not been proven by facts. We haven't seen people move in this manner, in a manner to which, oh, yeah, you guys would love to protect us. This is what's going on. All of these different things. And that's not the case. That is not the case. It is just simply not the case. Because for these police officers to get away and get there are other things taking place here, they might be able to be held accountable federally. There's more things coming down the pipeline. However, it just breaks my heart that this was even the verdict, because it breaks my heart that not even one count was found guilty, and all of the evidence that was given, and the fact that this was incredibly heartbreaking, and it was excessive force. I don't care what the media is saying. I don't care at this point what the courts are saying. I heard that this was an all-white jury, the trial. And it breaks my heart. It's like at this point, African American people are being paid to take each other down, because they're like, no, we're not trying to deal with the racial injustice of it all. So we're going to set it up to where we can have our own takedown, them. And once it comes to a conversation of, when you become blue, you're not black anymore. Because for you to, as a black man, you step out of your house every day, the things that you're faced with and the injustices that you're faced with, and you go out and you do this to another human being, another person of color. It's disrespectful. It's hurtful. It breaks my heart that this was even the reality of it all. Like, why? And I can't even take that it got this far. I don't even understand. I can't fathom the idea that it got this far, that they never caught themselves, that they took it this far. And that tells me that they have been taking it this far, And then we see cases and we see situations happen where people are taking the law within their own hands, and people wonder as to why. Why is this happening? What's going on? Why? Because of instances and situations like this, we have been told, people of color, that there is no justice in the justice system. There just isn't, and it's scary and it's hurtful because you don't know how to proceed. You don't know what to tell your children. You have these beautiful children and you bring them into this world and you don't know what to tell them and how to advise them to protect themselves. You don't know what to say, and it kills you and it breaks your heart because somebody took, one thing people don't tell you about having children. Once you have children, right, it literally feels like a part of you is somewhere existing and living. Literally, you just can't breathe. It's like a part of your body exists out here in the universe. As a mother, I say this because I have felt it and I feel it for my daughter. So the fact that a piece of you is existing somewhere and you can't rest easy because somebody might harm it, might harm them, might do something, it's incredibly heartbreaking. Oh my God, justice was not served here. And this breaks my heart, especially because this crime was committed by black and brown people. We expected more. We should have been able to expect more. But at this point, it's like once you become a police officer, you have to choose, are you black or blue? And it's unfortunate. It breaks my heart for the family. And at this point, I don't think it's over. I think that they should continue to fight for justice for their son. And people should rally around them, wrap our arms around them, and help them through this difficult time. But it breaks my heart that it got this far. But you guys, just let me know what you think about all of this. I'm going to play the mother statements towards the end. And yeah, love you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, Ms. Wells.
Good afternoon.
Will you introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, please?
Hello, my name is Robon Wells. I'm the mother of Tyre Nichols.
Ms. Wells, will you spell your first and last name for the court reporter and for the jury, please?
My first name is R-O-W, V as in Victor, A-U, G-H-N as in Nancy, last name Wells, W-E-L-L-S.
Thank you, Ms. Wells. You mentioned you were the mother of Tyre Nichols.
Yes.
Tell the jury, are you married?
Yes.
Who is your husband?
Rodney Wells.
And how long have you and Mr. Rodney been married?
It'll be 13 years in November.
You mentioned Tyre was your son. Do you have other children?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury about your other children, their names?
Kiana Dixon is my oldest daughter. Michael Contreras is my oldest son. Lindsay Dupree is my middle son, and Tyre is my baby.
Ms. Wells, are you a native Memphian?
No.
Can you tell the jury when you moved to Memphis?
I moved to Memphis in 2008, March of 2008.
And I want to draw your attention back to the time of January 2023. At that time, where were you living in Memphis?
At 6743 Castlegate Lane.
And who lived with you at 6743 Castlegate?
My husband and my son Tyre.
Where were you employed back at that time in January 2023?
First Horizon Bank.
Was Mr. Rodney Wells employed at that time?
Yes.
And where did he work?
At FedEx.
Was Tyre Nichols employed at that time?
Yes.
Where did he work?
At FedEx.
Did your husband and son work together at FedEx?
Yes.
want to draw your attention specifically to the date of January 7th, 2023, a Saturday. Tell the jury what you remember about how that day started and specifically your interactions with Tyre that morning.
Well, when I woke up that morning, Tyre wasn't at home. He came in about 11:30 that morning. There was a co-worker that was teaching Ty how to drive the forklift. So Tyre would go in on Saturdays and they would, he would teach him how to do the forklift. Tyre, like I said, he came in about 11:30. We spoke briefly. He went and laid down. He got up about 2 o'clock or something like that. He took a shower, messed around the house, and about 3:30, he was on his way out the door.
And as he was on his way out, did you have a conversation with him before he left?
Yes, I was actually in the kitchen. I had just was taking out some food for dinner that night. He asked me what I was cooking. And he said, "Mama, are you getting ready? Are you cooking some chicken?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, how are you going to make it?" And I said, "Well, I think I'm going to do sesame chicken today." And he just kind of rubbed his stomach. Okay. So about 3:30, he was on his way out the door. He hugged me and said, "I'll see you later."
Did he enjoy your sesame chicken?
No, he never made it home to enjoy my sesame chicken.
Tell the jury what's the next thing you heard about Tyre that day.
Well, about 8:30, I say about 8:30-ish, 8:45, somewhere up in there, we got a knock at the door. My husband and I, we were getting ready to watch a basketball game. I was complaining about my stomach hurting earlier. So he decided to come in the room with me and watch the game. And we were just going to lay across the bed and watch the game. We got a knock at the door. Bang, 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 Memphis Police. My husband went to the door. I heard a gentleman say, "Does Tyre Nichols live here?" My husband, he paused a second, and then I came to the door, and I said, "Yes, Tyre lives here. I'm his mother. What's going on?" They proceeded to tell me, the police officer that was at the door, it was actually 2 police officers at the door. One proceeded to tell me that Tyre was arrested. And I asked them why he was arrested. And they said for DUI. And DUI, that didn't sound right to me.
And tell the jury, why doesn't that make sense to you?
Because my son, he doesn't drink like that to have a DUI. We're not drinkers in our families. So Ty would barely drink a beer, or something. So it just didn't seem right to me. They proceeded to ask me, was he on drugs? Did he do any type of drugs? And I said, no, he don't do any type of drugs. Smoke a little marijuana. And I said, why? They said because he had all this wild strength and all this strength and everything, and they had to end up pepper spraying him and tasing him. And that still didn't sound right to me. And I made a statement. Well, if all of that happened, then somebody must have put something in his drink or something if they were saying all of this stuff happened. So the officer told me that they were going to be taking my son to the hospital. I asked them where my son was, and the officer said he was nearby. And I said, nearby? And they said they were going to take him to the hospital because he had been tased and pepper sprayed. I said, well, okay, what hospital is he going to? I need to go. The officer told me that I could not go because Ty was arrested. He proceeded to get some more information from us and everything, and then they left.
After those officers left, what did you do next?
After the officers left, I started kind of pacing the floor a little bit. I got my phone, and I started trying to call my son. He didn't answer. I told my husband, come on, let's go. Let's go find Ty. He took a little too long, and I had jumped in the truck, my SUV, and there was another police officer just sitting out there. So my husband came. We were going to take the route that we thought, Tyre would come home. And because they were saying that they were taking him to the hospital, we just kind of assumed that it would be St. Francis, because that's where normally they take, people. So as we got into our vehicle, and we drove to Rains and Castlegate. We made a right on Rains. No, we made a right on Ross. I'm sorry. We made a right on Ross. We got down to Rains and Ross, and that's when we noticed Ty's car.
Now, that intersection at Ross and Rains where you see Ty's car, how far is that from your house, Ms. Wells?
Probably a half a mile.
When you saw Ty's car there, what did you do?
We immediately pulled over, and I got out the car and I started speaking to the officer that was there. The officer asked me again. It was a different officer. He asked me again, was my son on any type of drugs or anything, because he just had all this strength and all this Hulk Hogan strength and everything, and they had to do all these things to him in order for them to arrest him. And I kept trying to find out why they were arresting him in the first place.
And did that officer you were speaking with at Ross and Rains answer that question for you?
I don't recall. He just said my son was pulled over for DUI and he ran from the police. I think that's what he said. I can't remember if he said.
Did you come into contact with any other officers at that scene, or just one?
There was another officer there. They were gathering up the tape. He spoke to me, the officer did, and he handed me his card. After that, we left and went back to the house.
At that point, what is your plan? Are you waiting to hear more, or what were you doing during that time?
Well, when I got back home, I called my daughter, because I was actually on the phone with my daughter prior to the police coming to the door. And I called to let her know, Ty's been arrested. And she said, what? And after I explained to her what was told to me, we were both kind of baffled about it. And I said, well, there's nothing I can do tonight, I don't even know where he is. I'll just figure it out tomorrow, and I'll let you guys know what's going on.
What is the next thing you heard about or from Ty?
About 4 o'clock in the morning, I received a phone call from a doctor from St. Francis Hospital. The doctor asked me if I knew if my son was in the hospital. I said yes. I heard he got arrested and he was tased and pepper sprayed. The doctor said, no, ma'am, your son is sick. And I said, what do you mean he's sick?
Yeah, I checked through what the doctor said, other than some of the premise behind it, but she can't go into what his diagnostics are.
Your Honor, may we approach? What he said, did you become extremely concerned about Ty's condition?
Yes, very concerned. Until to the point where I called my cousin and I said, get over here right now. We need to get to the hospital and go see Ty.
And is that what you did?
Yes.
Who went to the hospital with you at that time?
My cousin Tony, she came over to meet us, and my husband and I.
What hospital was Ty at?
At St. Francis Hospital.
And tell the jury what happened when you walked into St. Francis.
As we were walking into St. Francis, there was another officer walking in. We were kind of going in the same direction, so I asked, you're working late tonight, huh? He said, yes. He said, I'm here to sit with a prisoner. And I said, well, is the prisoner's name Tyre Nichols? And he said, yes. And I said, well, that's my son. He said, oh, okay, well, follow me. So we all proceeded to walk to Ty's room.
Ms. Wells, I know this is going to be difficult, but I want you to explain for the jury when you went in Ty's room what you saw, what Tyre looked like, what you saw, what you felt, what happened in that moment.
When I walked into the room and I saw my son, I immediately went over to him and I fell out on him because my son was beaten to a pulp. His head was the size of a watermelon. His nose was broken. His neck was split open from the swelling. He was bruised from head to toe. It was like they beat the shit out of him. That's what they did. They beat the shit out of my son and left him for dead. That's what they did.
And Ms. Wells, were there other officers in that hospital room when you walked in?
The doctor was there. There were some other officers in there. Once I saw my son and I basically passed out on him, basically. I just laid on him and just started crying. And I just burst out and said, what the fuck is going on here? This does not look like no pepper spray and no tasing. And a police officer took my husband and I out the room. My cousin stayed there and took us into another room. I want to say it was a sergeant or captain, I can't remember. We spoke briefly. And then next thing you know, all of Shelby County police and everybody was out the room. They said TBI had taken over the case. And all the police officers that were there were gone. And so it was just the TBI, the nurses, the doctor, and my husband and my cousin. We were in the room with my son.
When you saw your son, was he ever responsive to you that night?
No. Tyre was not responsive. He was on a breathing machine, and the machine was keeping him alive.
And did you know from the minute you walked in that room that night that your son was gone?
Yes. You couldn't. There's no way my son would have survived from that. He was already deceased, basically. I say they must keep him on those breathing machines for 72 hours. But my son was deceased.
Ms. Wells, several days after that, Did you get a call like that from the hospital on January 10th informing you of your son's passing?
Yes, I got a call a little after 2 by that same doctor, Charles. I want to say Charles. I can't remember. I meant to look. I can't remember. He said, Mrs. Wells. I said, yes. He said, this is Dr. from St. Francis Hospital. I said, yes. He said, I just called to tell you that I pronounced your son deceased at 1:41 p.m. And I just lost it. I dropped the phone and I lost it. 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 Because the first thing I had to do is try to figure out how I'm going to tell his siblings that their little brother is deceased. That was one of the hardest things that I ever had to do as a mother, is to explain to them. I called my daughter. When I explained it to her, I heard her falling down the stairs. She cracked her nose. And the fact that I'm from California, all my kids still live in California. So it was very difficult to not be there to tell them. I called my middle son, my oldest son, Michael. I told him, I don't even think he even heard me. And the reason why I say that is because a couple days later, he called. He said, Mom, what's going on with my little brother? Why haven't you called and told me anything? I said, Mike, Ty is gone. And he just lost it. He was like, what do you mean he's gone? I said, I told you Ty didn't make it. And he lost it. And then I had to call my other kids. My middle son, I had to call him. And then my god kids, and everybody just started. Everybody knew at that time. Yes, that was the most hardest thing that I ever had to do as a mother, as a parent, to tell the siblings that your baby brother is deceased, and really for no reason at all.
Ms. Wells, at the time that Ty passed, how old was he?
Ty was 29. He was a 29-year-old young man still trying to find his way in life. You know, he hadn't found his way yet. He was getting there. He loved to skateboard.
Ms. Wells, I'm going to pass you a picture. Can you tell the jury what you see in that photograph?
My happy Tyre.
And is that what Tyre looked like that day he left your house on the afternoon of January 7th, 2023?
Yes. He didn't have on his suit, but yes.
Your Honor, I would ask this be marked as Exhibit 2.
All right, we'll just go ahead and first enter the stipulation on the record for Exhibit 1, and then we will show the picture of Tyre Nichols as Exhibit 2.
Your Honor, permission to publish.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Wells, looking up at the TV screen here in the courtroom, is that the photograph of Tyre?
Yes.
Is that what he looked like that afternoon when he left your home?
Yes. Yes, that's what he looked like.
And Ms. Wells, after this occurred, you had been told, you mentioned that the officers said that night that Tyre was nearby.
Yes, nearby.
Did you later find out that the events in this case happened at Castlegate and Bear Creek?
It was later on. Actually, my son, they were looking at different videos and things of that nature, and they realized that this had happened in a neighborhood. And as they started putting two and two together, they realized that it happened in the first cul-de-sac of our subdivision.
And tell the jury, if you can, about how far from your front door to where this happened, that cul-de-sac where Castlegate and Bear Creek is, how far away is that?
About 80 to 100 feet.
Ms. Wells, I'm going to pass you another photograph. Ms. Wells, do you recognize what's in that photograph?
Yeah, I recognize
And can you tell the jury what you see there?
my son beaten to a pulp
And where was that picture taken?
at St. Francis Hospital. My husband actually took this picture.
And is that what he looked like when you first saw him?
Yes. As we were walking in, and I saw him, and as I was walking over towards him, my husband took this picture.
Your Honor, I ask this be marked as Exhibit 3.
Any objection? We'll show the photo of Mr. Nichols in the hospital as Exhibit 3.
Your Honor, permission to publish.
Okay.
Ms. Wells, looking at the TV in the courtroom, is that the photograph you just looked at?
Yes.
And is that what your son looked like when you first saw him that night?
Yes.
Or the early morning hours of
Early
January
morning.
8th?
Yes.
At some point after Ty passed, did you all have a memorial service for him?
Yes, we did.
And when and where was that, Ms. Wells?
It was approximately, I can't remember the date.
That's okay.
I'm drawing a blank on the funeral home, and I'm drawing a blank right now.
That's okay. Did you have a service here in Memphis?
I did. Ty actually had 2 services.
And if one was here in Memphis, where was the other?
Both of them were in Memphis.
Okay.
Yes.
Just one moment, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, we pass the witness.
All right, Mr. Perry.
No cross-exam, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Leffler.
Thank you, Your Honor. As well as, my name is Steve Leffler. I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to refer to your son as Mr. Nichols.
Thank
I think he
you.
deserves that respect.
Thank you.
And so if I use Mr. Nichols, I'm talking about your son. Not only are you the mother of Mr. Nichols, you're also the administrator of his estate. Is that correct?
Yes.
And as the administrator,
Your Honor, may we approach?